Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the first session of your conference. Some of you may or may not remember me. My name is Robin Conrad Hansen. I served as president of NAESP during 2015-2016 school year. And during that year, I had an opportunity to get to know Lee Jenkins a little bit better. He and I don't live too far apart in Arizona. He's in Scottsdale and I'm in the Gilbert Mesa area. And I called him up one day and I just said, Lee, I want to learn more about what you do. And he says, come on over, get in the car. And so we went to schools that he works with, and he does phenomenal work. The teacher testimonies that I heard that day was fantastic. So you're in for a real treat today. And it's my honor to be able to introduce him. So let's welcome, please, Lee Jenkins to the microphone.
Thank you, Robin.
You're very welcome.
Okay, bye. Oh, good grief. Mary, why are you calling me? You know I'm in a session. Oh, not her again. Mrs. Huffington? Oh, no. Are the boys throwing rocks into her swimming pool again? It's not boys, it's girls this time. Oh, yes, I bet you she's really upset. Okay, I gotta get back to the group. Mrs. Huffington, I understand that some girls threw rocks into your swimming pool. Yeah, I realize I'm the worst principal in the world. Yes, I understand that. Yes, we've had this conversation before. Yes, I understand. I tell you what, Mrs. Huffington, I'll come over and see you. We'll talk about this. So I went out the back gate of the schoolyard, down the street, rang our doorbell. Mrs. Huffington ushered me into the backyard. And there we were, Mrs. Huffington, me, and the rocks in the bottom of the swimming pool. I said, well, how do you know it was the girls that threw rocks over the schoolyard fence into your pool? Because I was standing right here looking through it. I saw them. So she took the opportunity for about 10 minutes to evaluate my effectiveness as a principal. After a little bit, I decided I'd had enough evaluation for the day and was kind of stepping back, a few steps back. I can't believe it. I fell in the pool. And as I was dragging myself up the ladder and then walking over, I was sloshing in my shoes, Mrs. Huffington was bent over in laughter. Actually, what happened was we developed a little better relationship and rapport because of that. Not that it was perfect, but it did get better because of my tour into the pool. So why do I start with that? It's because there's a lot you'll learn today and in the rest of the conference. But I fully understand it's the rapport and the relationships you already have with your staff, your students, your parents, and your bosses that make it possible for you to implement anything that you're going to learn here. The relationships and the rapport are huge. They're the foundation. Now, the metaphor we're going to use is a net, a soccer goal net. And the net is to catch opportunities. We want to put this net in the mind of every one of our students. And the soccer balls are opportunities. What I want you to do is open up your handouts to the very first page. On the back of the first page, there's an opening there. And I want you to take out a pencil and draw the soccer goal post that's here. Draw it on that first page of your handout. And we're going to complete it as we go on. But we want you to draw that. Then you can see that there's two kind of rebar stakes to hold the soccer goal in place in the middle of the storms. One's called relationship and one's called rapport. If you could draw it the way it is up on the screen. And that will set the stage for our time we have together. On the screen is one of my favorite rapport and relationship slides of my whole career. A student was given the only centimeter tape in the classroom and was asked to measure 10 things in the classroom and write down what she measured and the length, how many centimeters long it was. And what did the student want to measure very first out of all the things in the classroom? The teacher's waist. That is rapport and relationships. It was not something I aspired to be. But when it arrived, I accepted the new job with joy. The new job was grandpa. So at a sporting event with family, grandson indicated he needed to go to the bathroom. So me, the grandpa, volunteered for the duty. So took him by his hand and we're walking down the hallway. We walk into the restroom and I panicked. Oh, there's no urinal. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. And then I realized, no, I was in the right place. This is crazy. There was no urinal. But, oh well, there's toilets. So I walked over to the toilet, put the toilet seat up, pulled grandson's pants down, arms around his chest, and he's busy doing what he's supposed to do. And then there's a big bang and crying and howling. And I've got one arm around his chest trying to hold him at the right height, facing the right direction. And with the other arm, I took the toilet seat and I pushed it back. And I said, that stupid toilet seat. Well, he finished his jobs. I dried off his tears, put his pants back up, and a hairy grandpa took grandson back to his parents. Oh, I was so relieved. But not for long. Because you see, grandson looked into his mother's eyes and into his father's eyes. And he said, Grandpa, you can see him with his hands on his waist. Grandpa said a bad word. Well, you know what I did? Hands up, shoulders higher, palms out, eyebrows together, mouth wide open, like that. And while I was doing that, wife said, in a tone you can imagine. And let me just say, it wasn't the tone she uses first thing every morning to say hello to our puppy. Wife said, Lee, what did you say? And before I could say anything, grandson said, Grandpa said stupid. Well, then daughter-in-law said grandson had been calling everything stupid. And they were trying to get him to stop. You tell me what the word is for relief, laughter, just a breath. Let me just tell you though, for now, stupid is going to return. Hang in there with me. Stupid is going to come back. I surveyed 3,000 teachers in various seminars. I asked 2 questions. What grade level do you teach? And what % of your kids love school? I averaged the kindergarten teacher responses together. 95% of the teacher said 95% of their kids love school. Then the first grade teacher said 90% of their kids love school. And it went down, 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 until we ended up with 65% at the end of elementary school love school. Then it went down further in the middle school, ended up at 48% at the end of middle school. The low, 37% love school in grade 9. It ticked up a little bit in high school, but never got as high as grade 8. John Hattie, by the way, 3 years ago, named this the Jenkins curve. I would have never named it that. But he did, And everywhere he speaks, he shares, or just shouldn't say everywhere, but most everywhere, I've seen him a couple of times, he shares that, the Jenkins curve. It really got his attention. And it should get our attention. So, here's the problem we have to solve. It's a huge problem for us to solve. We're going to work on it today. The problem we have to solve is, how do we impart the skill that we need children to learn in their years with us and not damage their will to learn or their thrill from the learning? John Hattie gave us the triplets: skill, will, and thrill. The net that we're going to put on later, towards the end of the presentation, is the skill. But right now, it's the will and the thrill. And that graph there, the Jenkins curve, is evidence that the will to work hard and the thrill from the learning gradually disappears. And because of that, we get the Jenkins curve. So what I want you to do, on your soccer goal post that you drew on the second page of your handout, I want you to name the two sides of that goal post. I want you to name them will and thrill. That's what holds it together. It's the will to work hard and the thrill from the learning that keeps this opportunity net possible. Because if the will and thrill disappear, it's very difficult to figure out how we're going to have this kid prepared for whatever opportunities arrive. Because they don't care anymore. It's gone. They were born with it, but they've lost it. Because of John Hattie's influence, we created the will and thrill matrix. If you will look on your back cover, you will see that, the will and thrill matrix. It's on my website, so if people can print it out and use it. But there it is, the will and the thrill matrix. Teachers use this once a month or once a quarter to get feedback from their students on how they're doing. It's really nice to know the first week of school, where they're coming in. So if you look at the rows, they're labeled, I'm not trying it all, to 100%, I'm all in. If you look at the columns, they go from hate to love. So look at that and put a dot where you were in high school. Can you put a dot where you were in high school? Were you coasting? It's just saying it's okay. That'd be the dot in the very middle. It was okay and I was just coasting. I interviewed 3 people recently who kept all of their will and thrill all the way through grade 12. There may be some more in this room who did. When I asked educators and say, what percent of your kids in high school are in the upper right corner? They have all the will to work hard and all the thrill from learning they once had in kindergarten. They kept it all the way through. The answer I get is always somewhere south of 10%. Okay. I talked to a senior from a very prestigious charter school, North Carolina. I said, how many of your kids, how many seniors that you know just love to come to school to learn? She said, well, there's 7. I said, oh, well, I'm surprised to hear that so fast. Well, how many seniors are there? Well, there's 140. Well, that's 5%. Then she said, well, there could be some others. I only know the kids in the advanced placement courses. I don't know all the seniors. Okay? So that's what makes it so difficult, our job. They've lost the will and thrill. So our job, but that's the challenge. How do we maintain the will and thrill that they came into kindergarten with and still have them learn all the things they're supposed to learn? That is our challenge. And then, would you take a look at the Jenkins curve for one more time and just ask yourself, and maybe tell the people sitting next to you, Did you lose your will and thrill going through the school years? And if so, at what grade level did you lose it? I can tell you for me, I hung on to my will and thrill till grade 9. Now here is John Hattie's challenge. When he shares the Jenkins curve, he says, this is the challenge. I want you to beat the Jenkins curve. That's what he wants. Let's do better. So, if in your school, it's better than the Jenkins curve. See if it is. And then, make it better again. And if it is, then better again. Why is that so important? Because we know that if we can maintain the will and thrill they bring with them to kindergarten, how much easier it is to get the skill in their head that we want them to learn. In fact, here's the ideal. The kids are pressuring the teacher to teach more instead of the teacher pressuring the kids to learn more. That's what we want. We want that when the teachers are together in the staff room, we want them complaining. There's just not enough time to prepare all the things these kids want me to teach. That's what it's about. And if we maintain the will and thrill, that's what the complaint in the staff room will be. So that is John Hattie's challenge for us. Now for me, a perfect school is one where it's maintained with every kid. Every kid maintains the will and thrill they brought with them. If we would not have the Jenkins curve, it'd be gone. It'd be a straight line. Okay? I want to share with you the power of the word perfect in your leadership. So here it is. No matter what you're working on in your school, no matter what you're working towards, the first step can be to define perfect. Let's say you're working on your PLCs. What would a perfect PLC be? If you're working in your math program, you're trying to reinsert social studies, which No Child Left Behind kind of eliminated. We're trying to reinsert it. What would perfect be? Okay? Perfect history, perfect geography. Just what would perfect be? For me, perfect is that children maintain that will and thrill they brought with them to kindergarten. That's my definition of perfect. But it doesn't mean it's the only one. Look, whatever you're working on, what would perfect be? Then you say, very loudly, we will never be perfect. We'll never be perfect. But if you don't know what perfect is, we're just going all different directions. That's what happens to us all the time in education. This thing, new thing comes, something new comes. Look at all the money and effort that was spent on teacher evaluation, 4 or 5 years ago? Okay? It's always, so what would perfect be? Then you say, we're never going to be perfect, but then you say, where are we now? An example. Let's say, just for school discipline, you said, perfect would be no office referrals for discipline for a whole year. That would be perfect. Okay? Then you say, we're never going to be perfect. Okay? Then you say, well, where are we now? How many office referrals have we had the last few years on the average? It's pretty much the same every year. Then you limit the brainstorming of getting better to what can bring you closer to perfect. It's not all these ideas out there. No, we're going to limit it. What do we think will get us closer? And let me just say, as administrators, I think we're a lot better off to use the word hypothesis rather than the word plan. See, when I have a plan, my ego's tied to the plan. I want my plan to work for my ego, right? If it's a hypothesis is in the air someplace. And we're going to test out this hypothesis and see if it'll get us closer to perfect. If it doesn't, oh well, it's a hypothesis. Nobody owns it. And we'll come back together and we'll come up with a new one. Instead of being embarrassed that our plan didn't work. Okay? So you test that idea and see, and then start over. When I share with people the Jenkins curve, I get 3 attitudes. One attitude is people blame the parents for the loss of enthusiasm. Another attitude is blame society, which includes the legislators. Another attitude is to blame the kids. Okay? I'm actually none of those three. I blame history. That's what I blame. For the loss of that will and thrill, I blame history. Here's a little known story, 2,000 years old. History. The calendar used to work out better than it does now. January had 31 days. February had 30 days in leap year, 29 days the other years. And it was 3130, 3130, 3130, 3130 all of the way through. We didn't need our knuckles to remember how many days in each month. We didn't need a little poem in our head, right? It worked. It was easy. Julius Caesar wanted a month. So July was named after him. It still worked. 3130, 3130, 3130, all the way through. It was simple. Caesar Augustus came to power. He's the same guy that's in the Christmas story that we celebrate every Christmas. Caesar Augustus said, if Julius has a month, what about me? Why can't I have a month? So the month after July was renamed, and it is now what we call it, August. Was Caesar Augustus happy? No. You'd think so. You got a month named after him, right? I mean, nobody named a month Jenkins, right? So he should be happy, right? So, got a month. Why wasn't he happy? Because he only had 30 days in his month, and Julius had 31 days in his month. So what did they do to make Caesar Augustus happy? They took a day out of February, and they plunked it into August. And now Caesar Augustus is a happy Caesar. He's got a month and 31 days just like Julius. But there's a problem. You see, you can't have 3 31s in a row. So September had to go down to 30, October up to 31, November down to 30, December up to 31. That's how we got it. I told you stupid would return. It is rather stupid that after 2,000 years we've got this calendar that's mixed up. But actually it's not causing huge problems, so leave it alone. But it's history that gave us that. And so what gives us, it's history that gave us these habits that destroy the will and the thrill. And we have to figure out what it is. We need to clean it up. Here's a story from a first grader on a cleaning up assignment. The tomato worm has diarrhea. How do I know? Because I'm cleaning it up. We can clean it up. Now, before I share with you 3 stupid things we inherited, the history gave us, that caused this loss of enthusiasm, the loss of will and thrill, I'm going to give you the basic psychology from Piaget. David Elkind summarized all of Piaget's work into this basic psychology. And here's the first part. Your students do not think like you think. They don't. You can say to a primary age child, do you live in Chicago? They'll say yes. Do you live in Illinois? Yes. Well, explain to me, how do you live 2 different places at the same time? And they can't explain it. They don't think like you think. One disgusted first grader said to me, I think I just must live in between. They don't think like we think. When I was 13, I had my first job. I was in a hospital. I was filing forms. A friend of mine, who was also 13, we were filing forms. And on the form, it always listed the reason why the patient was released from the hospital. We kept seeing the same thing over and over. It said, false labor. At 13, we had no idea what that meant. All we could figure out was the wrong guy must have done the job. We just didn't know what it meant. Kids don't think like you think. But here is something that is just so important with this. And that is, children, your students feel like you feel. It's easy to know how kids feel. They feel like you feel. 100 years ago, when NAASP started, my father was in grade 1, eastern Colorado, near the Kansas border. He was lined up in school. Recess was over. They were standing in line. An airplane flew over, 1921. He'd never seen an airplane before. He knew there were airplanes in Denver, but they never came out there where he lived. So he yelled in line, "There's an airplane!" so everybody could see it. And what happened? The teacher taped his mouth shut for talking in line. My father told us that story when he was 90, and we all knew how he felt 84 years earlier. Children feel like you feel, like I feel. There is no difference. So, if you're, see, I was at a baseball game with a friend, Arizona Diamondbacks. We were walking down the concourse, and there was some really odd behavior from this man. So we alerted security and said, "You kind of need to watch this guy. We don't know. Kind of watch." They said, "Thank you. We'll take care of it." So my friend and I, we got our drinks, our hot dogs, sat down in our seat, ready for the game to start. About 30 minutes later, the security guard came up and said, "Thanks, guys, for telling us about that man. We checked him out. Everything's okay, but thank you. We appreciated it." Okay, he left. So then I'm thinking, there's 30,000 people here. 30,000. How did the security guard find us two guys? Do I have a toilet seat around my neck? I mean, how? Then it dawned on me. We were easy to find. You see, I'm white, in my 70s, average height. My friend is in his 30s, 6'3", and black. We were easy to find. Probably the only ones in the 30,000 that matched that description. So let me just say to you, when you're back at your school, and there's 30,000 things going on all at once, all clamoring for your attention. When an adult pretends that the children should think like they think, or an adult pretends, "Oh no, these kids don't feel like I feel," it's going to jump out at you like a cholla thorn. And if you have never hiked in Arizona, and you don't know what it's like to run into a cholla thorn, I can tell you, if you do, you'll be looking for a pair of pliers, because you will not pull the thorn out without pliers. I learned that from the same grandson that tattled on me. It took pliers when a cholla jumped on him. So now, I'm going to share with you a solution to our problem. The problem being, how in the world do we keep the will and the thrill high at the same time we're imparting with them all that they need? Our responsibility. I call them the three stupids. You don't have to call them stupid. You use whatever title you want. I call them stupid because it matches the story. But on the page 3, there's a place for you to write them down. The first one is data for discouragement. Data designed to discourage people. I shared this with Jack Canfield. He said, well, Lee, I went to a military school. And every time there was an exam, they put the name of the student with the top score and their score. Then the number 2 score and their name. Number 3 score, name. Number 4 score, name. He said that may have motivated the top 2 or 3 students, but it certainly didn't motivate the rest of us. So you think, well, have we gotten better over these years? Well, not really. We've gotten fancier. Here's a bulletin board, probably 4 times larger than the screen here. It's a football field. The teacher put a lot of effort into that. It's a football field. There's a helmet, probably 4 inches tall for every kid. Big, black, bold letters for their name. The idea is that every kid's going to be motivated to move their helmet to the end. So what do you think? I think that we may have some kids that are motivated, and we probably got a whole bunch who aren't motivated. Maybe we can say, this kid's motivated, this one, maybe these 2. But over at the far left, there's 5, 1 who's made it to the 1 yard line, and 4 who haven't even made it to the 1 yard line yet. That is data for discouragement. Every day, when those 5 kids at the far left walk into school, they see their name in big, bold letters. I had a teacher say, she said, I'm in my 30s, and ever since kindergarten, I have thought I was dumb. Because in kindergarten, there's a sticker chart. Names of all the kids, stickers after their name. And there's just a little modern one. And I walked to the room next door to this classroom. It's a baseball field. There's the home run kids and the strikeout kids. Walk to the room next door, and there's a dartboard. There's the kids whose names are in the bullseye and the kids who haven't even hit the target. Okay? That is data for discouragement. We all know that the legislatures and most of our states do it to us. They think they can motivate people by putting in the newspaper that they have low test scores. No, it discourages people. Okay? So when we just talked about the kids have the same feelings as us, we don't like it when the journalists do that to us, and kids don't like it when the educators do it to them. So we have to use data. Data has to be something that's for joy, not something for harm. Here's a writing by a young child. This is a frog. It got run over by a car. Smush. That's how those 5 kids at the far left feel every day. Smush. Data for discouragement is stupid, number 1. And our job is to get rid of it. Get it out of there. You won't forget that one next October. You got some people that would like that one. My wife and I had a new garage door opener installed. And it happened that our garage door was the same frequency as the neighbor across the street's garage door. They were so frustrated. My wife and I, we didn't know anything was wrong, but they did. They would get in the car, back out of the garage, put the garage door down, say to each other, the garage door's closed, right? They both saw it closed. Go out to eat, come back, and their garage door's up. It went on for a month. They could not figure out what was wrong with their garage door. And one day, my wife and I back out of the driveway, put our garage door down, and simultaneously their garage door went up. And they go, problem solved. So why do I share that with you? It's because the technician that gave us the new garage door opener did not intend to harm anybody. And my wife and I didn't intend to harm anybody, but it could have been harm. Fortunately, it wasn't, but it could have been. And the teachers who put those bulletin boards up, all that work with the baseball field, the dartboard, and the football field, they didn't sit at home and say, how many kids can I harm with this bulletin board? No. They honestly thought they were going to motivate their kids to learn. They didn't realize how many losers and how much damage they were going to cause. They didn't know it. It wasn't on purpose. Just like the technician for the garage door didn't harm anybody, want to harm anybody. It was a historical thing they invented, that they inherited, historical idea that if we make a contest in there, that will motivate all the kids. We inherited that idea, and it motivates some, but not all. So, there is the root of that. It is an historical thing we've inherited, and we have to learn how to replace that, and I will share with you, replace data for harm with data for joy. I couldn't believe what was happening to me. It was 10 days before school started. 10 days. A teacher came into my office and said, Lee, I just came from the personnel office. I've resigned. I thought, oh, no, why? He said, my wife got transferred to London, and we're going to keep our family together. So hastily, we're interviewing. We had a series of questions, but one of them was the typical question, why do you want to be a teacher? And one candidate said, let me tell you why. If you hire me, I'm going to show the kids in this school how to get really good grades. They're going to cram on Thursday nights, and they're going to do well on Friday, and they're going to do well on all those chapter tests. They're going to get it. Now I realize they're going to forget it on Saturday, but I don't care. You see, that's what I did all the way through school. I crammed on Thursday night, I got A's on Friday, I forgot on Saturday, and I was honored by everybody for that. I got scholarship awards, I got certificates, my parents got stickers to put on the back of the car for being on the honor roll, everything. I didn't learn, but I knew the system. And I'm going to show my students, if you hire me, how to play the system and get the grades. They will all know how to do that. We interviewed all the people, and the committee said, hire that one. I said, why? Because finally somebody told us the truth. Actually, that story's not true. I've never met a teacher yet who doesn't want the kids to remember what they taught. It's not true. But we do have a problem. We have a system that honors cram and forget. Grandma had her granddaughter for the weekend. Granddaughter was in grade 1. She'd been there for 5 or 6 weeks. She's dropped off at Grandma's house for the weekend. Grandma's going through the backpack. Oh, honey, I see you had a spelling test. Yes, Grandma. And Grandma said, sweetheart, you only missed 2 words. Let's work on those 2 words. And what did granddaughter, sweet, sweet, sweet granddaughter say to Grandma? No, Grandma, we're done with those words. We don't need them anymore. She didn't know that in kindergarten. They're bright, fast learner. Got it down. Happens with vocabulary. Happens sometimes with phonics. Certainly with spelling. almost always happens with literature. We buy all these programs that only ask kids questions about the current book. So they know full well when I'm done with this book and answer these questions, I can forget it all. So, no, what do we do? What should we do? No, when they finish a book, they should be asked to compare and contrast this book to the other ones they've read. Not just each one isolated, right? It's built in that they can forget. I was in the doctor's office, annual dermatology exam, sitting there in my underwear. Doctor came in. She said, well, what do you do for a living? I said, well, actually, I get on airplanes and I go places and I give speeches and do workshops. Oh, interesting. Well, who do you talk to? Well, I talk to teachers and principals and other educators. Huh. Well, what do you tell them? I wanted to get out of there and get my clothes back on. But anyway, what do you tell them? I say, well, we just need to fix our school system so it's impossible to cram. You actually have to learn. We need to fix it. And what did the doctor say to me? She said, oh, that's interesting. That's what I did all the way through medical school. So I didn't say what I was thinking. What I said was, well, you have to learn sometime, don't you? She said, that's what residency is for. That's when you learn, residency. Can you imagine a more broken system that we inherited? That they learn how in first grade all the way through medical school. It's about measuring short-term memory, not measuring long-term memory. If we consistently measured long-term memory, we wouldn't have any getting ready for the state test. Teachers I've worked with for years, in fact, Cody Arruda is one of them. There's a chapter about her in my book, How to Create a Perfect School. She teaches in 5th grade, Nebraska. I said, Cody, how long did you spend getting ready for the state test? She said, well, at the very most, 5 minutes. Because if you're always measuring long-term memory all along, you don't need to get ready for it. But if you're measuring short-term memory all along, then you have to spend a bunch of time getting ready for it because you know they forgot it all, right? So is this the fault of the teachers? No. Fault of the principals? No. It's history. We inherited a system that measures short-term memory. Okay? And that is stupid number 2. A system that honors cram and forget. We all inherited a forgetting system, not a remembering system. Three kids were home for Christmas. They're with mom. Two were in college, and one had finished college. Mom said, kids, while you're here, I need to know what to do. In the attic are 3 garbage bags for each of you. You see, we all know that you 3 were really, really good students. These garbage bags are full of certificates, awards, honors, ribbons, stickers for the car, bumper stickers, you name it. I got a bag like that for each of you kids. What should I do with them? Think for a minute. What did those 3 kids say to do with those bags of that all these people worked so hard to give them? What did they say instantly? I heard it. They said, trash them. They mean nothing. Nothing. So here's what I want you to do with people sitting around you. I want you to agree, in your school, how many incentives per day do kids receive? Just pick a number. Just talk to each other. How many incentives? If you're not close to somebody else, you can do it yourself. But then, once you've agreed on a number, Then I want one of you to get out your phone, and there's a calculator on your phone, and I want you to put that number into your calculator. Then I want you to multiply it by 180, or however many days in your school year. It could be different for you. Then multiply that by 13 years, unless you're fortunate enough to have a pre-K in your school, and then multiply it by 14 years. See what number you end up with. Go for it. There's the directions right there. Remember, this is if you do this, I'll do that. It's the marbles in the jar, stickers, all those, treasure chest, all that stuff. If you still need more time, raise your hand. I think you guys pretty much have it done. Okay? Okay, would you stand up if you had over 20,000? Look around. Stand up if you had over 15,000. Join the group. No, join the group. Join the 20,000 group. The 15,000 group, join the 20,000 group. Stand up if you had over 10,000. If you had over 5,000, join this group. Look at us. Is it working? I mean, you would think, okay, take a seat. If it was working, here's my suggestion. If it's working, then take the money out of the staff development budget and put it into your incentive budget. I shared that, and then I get pushback on that idea because they say there is no incentive budget. Teachers buy all those out of their own money, their own pocket. Is that true? They buy the donuts, the cupcakes, the stickers, all that out of their own pocket. Wow. I was in a teacher supply store in Colorado. And guess what? The owners of the teacher supply stores know how many incentives are given. More space in the teacher supply stores given to stickers than any one other thing. That's what the owner thinks of us. A continual flow of incentives or bribes is stupid number 3. If incentives worked, we would not have the Jenkins curve. I had a wonderful experience of watching Floyd Cooper work. He takes the art paper, paints it a deep, dark, rich brown, and when the paint is dried, he has the best collection of erasers I've ever seen. And all of his drawing is done with erasers. The drawing is done with erasers. When he's all done with the drawing, obviously he took some color and added color to the clothes and the apron and other things. But the actual drawing of the mom, the son, all of that is done with erasers. Okay? And so I put that in there because I've shared with you 3 stupids. And I say together we can erase the habits that are destroying will and thrill. We can erase them. Now what I want you to do is I want us to organize in this room by birth date. You can still say separated some, but if your birthday's in January, I want you to go over there. February right there. March, April, May, June will be in the very back. July, August, September, October, November, December will be right up here in the front. Okay, can you do that? Talk to each other, get organized within the month. Go for it. Now, if your birthday is this week, can you stand forward? Step forward if your birthday is this week. Anybody with a birthday this week? We don't have that, okay? Anybody with an August 31st birthday? No, I don't have it. Okay. So that took us about It didn't take us a minute to do that. And I'm going to share with you that instead of the bribes and incentives, we're going to give kids celebrations that they will never forget. And it doesn't take long. You see how we got here? Now, if there had been somebody whose birthday was this week, we were going to sing happy birthday to them to celebrate their birthday. But there was nobody, so we're not going to celebrate a nobody, okay? Okay? But you see, it doesn't take long to do celebrations. It's much less time to celebrate than it is to incentivize. And the kids don't forget it. So we want to create powerful memories in their kids' heads that they will never, ever forget. Instead of a bag full of trash that they don't care about. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment, because what we're going to do next is each of the 3 stupids I share with you, we're going to replace them. It is not, I don't think it's even, I don't know what the right word, I don't want to say ethical, but I don't like it when somebody says all the problems but doesn't give any solutions. Okay? We're going to spend time on solutions. And so we're going to do that right now. We're going to take a seat, we're going to go into solutions. If somebody had an August 31st birthday, and nobody did, but if they did, I would have said, because of, if it hadn't been for Caesar Augustus being so immature, you couldn't have an August 31st birthday. And I was going to give you a free book at the book signing at 11:30 because of an August 31st birthday. So maybe somebody should have lied to me. There we go. There's the hand right there. So there, August 31st. I'll claim that one. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, that was the plan. But I'm sorry, you didn't get an August 31st birthday. But it is true. If it hadn't been for Caesar Augustus's immaturity, August would have ended in 30 days, and you couldn't have had August 31st. Okay. So, okay, the solution part. What we're going to do is we're going to have data for joy instead of data for harm. Cram forget is now going to be learn remember. Incentives are now thank you celebrations. Growth mindset is now going to be visible, audible, and thrilling. So I'm going to just say this part before I share with you. What I'm going to share with you that makes growth mindset visible, audible, and thrilling is the work that I do in continuous improvement called L to J. I'm going to share with you examples, but please understand this. I do not believe I am the only person in the world that can figure out how to help kids keep their will and thrill and not have a Jenkins curve. I do not. If you don't implement anything I teach you that's coming up right now on a replacement, then leave with this. It is possible to replace those 3 stupids. And you might not do it the way Lee Jenkins thinks. You might do it your own way. It's fine. Let's keep the will and thrill alive however you do it. But I'm going to share you the way I teach it so you'll know that it's possible, but you don't have to do it the way I do it. Okay? I'm not here to convince you to do this the way I do it. What I'm here to convince you of is it can be done. Okay? So we're going to make growth mindset visible, audible, and thrilling. And when you make it visible, the room looks like graphs. It's visible, it shows growth. That is an elementary classroom. You'll see some close-ups later. And here is a middle school classroom. The teacher has 4 periods of the same subject, and there's the graphs for each period. It shows growth, and it's visible. So how do we do this? First thing we do is we have to tell the kids the key concepts they're going to learn for the year, the first week of school. Here's what you're going to learn for the year. Key could be essential. Key could be no trivia, but the essential concepts for the year. It could be something simple as, here are your spelling words for the year. Here they are. I was working with a grade 6 teacher, and she said, Lee, I can't give the kids a list of almost 800 spelling words for the year. I can't give them 800 words the first week of school. I said, I didn't tell you to give them 800 words. She said, well, that's how many's in my spelling program. Oh, well, how many years have you been using that? 6 or 7. Have they learned 800 words? No. So why do you have that many words? Well, that's what's in the program. Okay. So they have to think through what are the spelling words. And here's my advice when I give them. If they were to do it with spelling, it could be vocabulary, it could be other things to say, well, probably 60% of the words or so come from the program you've got. About 25% can come from words they misspell all the time. And the other words come from geography. Because the publishers never put the town you live in. They never put the state you live in. They don't put the adjoining states. They don't put the Yosemite in there if you're from California. They don't put those words in there. So the kids need those. So think about what it is. But that's a simple one. But here is from a middle school geography teacher. And it lists, these are the key concepts for the year. That's a part of the list so that you can read it a little bit. But it's not the whole list, but tell them what they're going to learn for the year. Tell them. That's different than what I'm going to teach. That's a syllabus. This is what you're going to learn, and don't number it like attorneys number it with all those decimal points. Just number it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then, so think about it. If you're working as a publisher of textbook materials, and there were 360 concepts for the kids to learn, you would put 10 of them per chapter, because there's 36 weeks in the year. You'd put 10 per chapter. And the end of each chapter would be a chapter test. And the problem is, that's the history that we inherited, and the kids know when that chapter test is over, they can forget it. Nobody tells them, but they figure it out. Okay? So what are we going to do so that kids can't cram? They actually have to learn it and remember it. What we do is random assessment. Please, you don't teach randomly. You teach logically. But we assess random. Random is what makes it accurate. So, out of those 360 concepts, we might pick out 16 at random every week that's the quiz is on. And people say, Lee, you're crazy. You're going to ask them questions about things they haven't been taught yet? Yes. Do we grade them on things they haven't taught yet? No. It's a non-graded quiz, but you know what? They like it. They especially like it when they get something right you haven't taught yet. Okay? And when I ask kids, what do you do with all 360? The kids will say to me, well, you just have to learn them. You can't memorize that much, you just have to learn it. Okay? What a unique idea. They get it, that the goal is to learn it. So I'm going to show you clever ways that people do random. This is what audiences like. The teacher put the key concepts in a hamster ball. You spin the hamster ball, pull one out, set it aside, another one, set it aside, another one, set it aside. When the quiz is over, put them all back in the hamster ball because anything can come up any week. The kids like seeing random in front of them. And then, this is from, anybody here from Canada? Okay, this is from Saskatchewan. And the teacher has, it's for science teachers, of course, and it's a hyperlinked periodic table. The teacher has a can full of tongue depressors. Go up to a kid, they pull out a tongue depressor, which has on the name of it an element. Then the kid gets help going up to the smart board, clicking on the symbol, and up comes a question from the science class. The question has nothing to do with that element. It's just a way to get to the element. The question, I mean. It's a way to get to the question. Are you okay on that? It's just a clever way to do random. And the kids say, well, if nothing else this year, I'm going to know the periodic table. Because every time they take a quiz, there it is. And then they take a quiz from those random items, and it looks like any other quiz. If you walked in the middle, you would not know that the questions were selected at random. Sometimes there's quizzes that are made up in advance that's done random behind the scenes. And those are math fluency quizzes that are on my website. But it doesn't matter whether you make it up ahead of time or not, but the most fun for the kids is to see they're random themselves. They like doing that. So they take the quiz. And then what happens? Students graph the results. How many they got right? That's a kindergarten class. You can see the teacher, the first few weeks of kindergarten, graphed it herself or himself. And then the kids are taught how to graph it. And you see the sticker there, that Post-it note. That's there so the kid can stay within the lines. We know that. Okay? And then I'm going to show you one of the most powerful ways to use data for joy. It's right here. That is a graph that is the total correct for the whole classroom. I can tell you, before I heard Dr. Deming speak when he was 92 years old, I would have never, ever, ever on my own thought of adding up the total for the whole class. It's crazy that we don't think of it, but we get locked into the kind of the culture, the way we do things. The football coach, the high school, is also the science teacher. The football coach goes to the game on Friday night and the scoreboard's broken. He is not happy. Then the football coach goes to teach science on Monday and there's no scoreboard on the wall to say how the class is doing, and he doesn't give it another thought. That's all it is a scoreboard. A scoreboard is addition, folks. It's adding up the total of each player, get the total. Those of us that live in Arizona were watching the Suns the other night. We wanted to get the total added up and wanted our team to win, right? Okay? But it's simple addition. And you can see every time that the student does better than ever before, we call that an all-time best. If you want to look at the research on what I showed you first, on the individual kindergartner graphing, you would look under personal best. That's where you'd go for research. Google Scholar, you look for personal best. If you want to look at the total for the whole class, go under visible learning and look at the research on collective efficacy. Because that's what it is. It's a team of people working together. They know what they did. They know they can do it again. And it's what we did, all of us. It's not an individual versus a class, it's both. Anybody here in pre-K? Anybody, how many have a pre-K school? Pre-K in your school, thank you. Okay, I'm glad. It was January. A new family moved into town. In the pre-K class, the kids were quizzed on 5 capital letters a week, drawn randomly out of a bucket of the 26 capital letters. One-on-one, each kid, sometime, not all the same day, was quizzed on 5. And they added up the total for the whole class. And the way they add that up typically is with Unifix cubes. You say every time if a kid gets 2 right, you put 2 Unifix cubes in a bucket. Next kid comes up and gets 1, put a Unifix cube in there. Next kid gets 5, put 5 in there. And then you ask kids to put them in clumps of 10. And then you sit down with the class and you add it up. 10, 20, 21, 22, and they see how many they got right as a class. So anyway, the new kid moved into town. So mom brings the new 4-year-old to the school to meet the teacher. So here's teacher, here's mom. They're standing right next to each other. I know I'm not supposed to do that right now. It's super cool. But anyway, standing right there. And the 4-year-old is right next to mom. It's real close, right? You understand how that works, okay? Because all these strange kids, I don't know one of them right there. So one of the other kids in the room comes up to the new kid who's standing right there next to mom and says, do you know your letters? The new kid says, yes. Oh, good. You're going to help our class. They're 4 years old, and they understand the power of a team. And you're in a middle school. There are kids in your school who will work harder for the team than would ever work for themselves. They want to help the team. Okay? And it's so simple. The most powerful statistical tool we have is addition, folks. It's addition. Add it up. And then we add it up for the whole school. And the celebration, like we did around the wall, is about how long it takes to do a celebration for the whole school. And that causes the principal, and the principal's the one that does that celebration. When the school has an all-time best, we just add it up. Add it up. There's 3 separate graphs that I'm going to talk about individually. Here's one. The class had an all-time best by 1. They went from 128 correct to 129 as a class. That's a special moment. Now, we know from sports, some kids are not stellar athletes. That was me. Not a stellar athlete. Not. I can relate to this kid. The kid's on the bench. The coach puts the kid into the game. The kid makes a free throw in the basketball game. Later on, that kid's team wins by 1 point. Does that kid hang his or her head and say, woe is me, I only made 1 point? Absolutely not. They say it was me. Because of my point, we won. Yay. That's what they do. Okay? As principals, you will have this experience from your classrooms regularly. The class will have an all-time best. And you will talk to a kid that you know well that's struggling. And you will find out that that kid got 1, 2, or 3 questions right. And that kid will know from the principal, you know it was you that put the class over the top. And then sometimes I've seen it a number of times, the whole school has an all-time best by 1 more question right. In the whole school than we've ever had before, just 1. And you get to talk to those struggling kids and say, thank you for your contribution. Hadn't it been for you, the school wouldn't have had an all-time best. Okay. Addition, please. So there's one of the special graphs. Then I want you to see this one. We haven't talked much about the histogram. But the reason my work is called L to J is we go from the beginning of the year from an L-shaped curve, a bell curve in the middle of the year, and a J curve at the end of the year. And I put that example of that on the back of your handout so you can see it. At least I think it's on the back. No, maybe it's, let's see. No, it's on page 3. It's on page 3. So, Arizona classroom, about February, I'm walking down the hallway of a school, and a teacher says, Lee, come here, you got to see this. Our class got a J curve for the first time today. They are so pumped. They want to share their joy with you. Come on in and share the excitement with our 3rd graders because they got to a J for the first time today. You see how data is for joy? Compare that, the 2 graphs, the graphs I'm sharing with you, to the one with the football field, which is data for harm. And then there's this one. There is the regular run chart. And you can see how many times the class had their all-time best. And they did something fun when they had an all-time best. They had something fun to do. But what I want to focus on is that green line right there. There's a green line. That is the goal for the year. Now, where did that number come from? Listen up, folks. This is key. Where did that number come from, the goal for the year?
Set by students?
No, almost. But it was set by prior students. This is the best number the best score the teachers ever had from prior years. When I've shared this with administrators, a principal in Indiana said to me, "Oh, Lee, I can't tell you how much time we waste as administrators setting the goal for the year." What should the goal be? Do better than you've ever done before. It's so simple, right? Just do better, and the kids buy into that. They want to do better than they've ever done before. That's what they want. And are they happy to have an all-time best along the way? Yes, but they're really happy when they have an all-time best. One teacher went to the principal and said, "Well, we beat the prior record today. The kids are pumped beyond, just so excited. What can we do? Do you have any ideas?" And the principal said, "Well, you know, there's a door that's always locked. I don't think you even knew it was there, but the custodian uses it. And if you go through that door, there's steps that take you up on the roof." It was a flat roof, obviously. "Take the kids up on the roof and let them yell." So they did. They are not going to forget when they were in grade 4, the class has now the record, the best record ever for the teacher, and they got to go up on the roof and yell. Okay? Compare that to the trash bags up in the attic. No. Create memories that they will never forget. So the goal is easy. So the first year, you don't have it. That could be, just think about discipline. You already have numbers. And you say, the fewest referrals to the office for discipline we've ever had in our school is this number. And if we beat it, we get the new record. We had the fewest ever. It goes into all kinds of things going on. It's the best. You beat it's like an athletic record, where students have that record in athletics. Maybe it holds for a number of years. And then we're going to celebrate. I mentioned the all-time best. Here is a middle school classroom. Alan Culp is mentioned in my book. There's 2 teachers mentioned in the book, Alan Culp and Cody Aruda. And when a student has a personal all-time best, they do better personally than they've ever done before, they go up to the teacher, high 10, and write their name on the whiteboard. Just before COVID hit us, the high school had a minimum day, and the middle school did not. So 3 high school kids decided, what are we going to do? We're out of school halfway through the day. What are we going to do? Oh, let's go visit our former middle school teacher. So they went over to the middle school. And they walked in. And they said, they looked at the charts, and they said, "Oh, I see that you're still doing that L to Z to J graphs." Alan said, "Yes." And what did they say on their day off from high school? "Can we take another quiz?" You think the title of the presentation out here is crazy. The crazy is the kids asking for other quizzes. We've had kids ask for quizzes the last day of school, 10 minutes before school's out. Why? Because they want to see if they can do better than they've ever done before. It's like a video game, you're trying to do better. I want to do better I want to prove I'm smarter. Okay? And so they said, "Can we take another quiz?" So Alan said to his middle school kids, "Do you care if we have another quiz?" They said, "Okay." So the 3 high school kids sat down, and he gave them another quiz. What did they want to do? They wanted to high 10 the teacher and write their name on the whiteboard, because of the memory they had from personal best. Okay? And then here is, out of our state where we are now in Illinois, a gong. When the kids have a personal best, they hit the gong. Remember I said we're going to make growth mindset visible and audible. And now classes celebrate. Anybody here from Ohio? There we go. This teacher graduated from Ohio State. When the class has an all-time best, she puts on Ohio State band music and they do the wave. That's free. It's not out of the teacher's pocket. It's fun, and they will not forget it. And here is Cody that I mentioned. fifth grade in Nebraska. She's expert at this. 5 or 6 different subjects where they're doing this process, a different celebration for each subject. But this one, she loves to sing, and so they're in 5th grade, and when they have an all-time best, they sing a song with rounds. One was Father Abraham. So the first motion is left arm. That's all they did, and they sat down. Sang the beginning, left arm, and sit down. Next time the class has an all-time best, left arm, right arm, sit down. Next time all-time best, left arm, left leg. Okay? But you see, the problem is you run out of motions. So by the end of the year, the kids have to create and invent new ones. And it is absolutely crazy at the end of the year. Why? The class did better than they've ever done before. Could be one, could be a whole bunch. And what you don't want is just a lucky time where it goes real high and it's hard to get another all-time best. You want it to go gradual so you can have more celebrations. Okay? You can't control that, but that's the ideal. But there is just celebrating, we did better than ever before. And now I'm going to share with you thrilling results. The first time I met John Hattie, he said, Lee, everything you need in the data you showed me, everything you need is there to calculate effect size. It's all there. I thought, wow, I thought effect size was beyond my pay grade. It's not. So I went back to my IT help, and we created a Google Doc. If you want it, you email me, I'll send it to you. It's no cost. It's a Google Doc. It's for effect size calculations. And what is in there is at the far left, the first 3 quizzes, L to J quizzes, the results. How many they get right? I've asked John. I said, you know, we can get a higher effect size if I compare the first quiz to the last one at the end of the year. But it doesn't seem right to me because we're drawing them at random, just to make the result on 1 and 1. I said, I think it's better to take 3 for your baseline data. 3 quizzes, and average that. He said yes. So we've got where we started, and every quarter, kids get their effect size. I have seen probably more thrill from children seeing their effect size for their classroom than probably any other thing I've done. Because they get to compare the 0.40, which is the average from John Hattie's work. They get to compare that number to how they're doing as a class. In this particular class, they had a 0.8 at the end of the first quarter. And they saw that their learning was double what's typical in a year. That's the most thrill I've seen in classrooms, is from that effect size calculation. And it's been done with first graders as low as first grade. There they are. One student reads the numbers. It's all anonymous data. There's no names. It's all anonymous data. Enter it in there. I called up Angie Wilner. And I said, Angie, when we first had the effect size calculator, I called her up. I said, Angie, I don't know if first graders can enter that data into that effect size calculator or not. Can you experiment for me? She said, okay. So she got a boy and a girl, and they took turns reading the numbers off and entering, reading the numbers and entering, then they switched jobs, and they both got to do it. So she let me know, yes, first graders can do this. Okay, well, I thought so, but I didn't know for sure. Well, then the problem was, all the other kids in the room wanted to know, what are those two doing? Right? Wouldn't that be natural? What are they doing? So then she's thinking, how do I explain effect size to first graders? So what she did was, she's got up here in her left hand 4 Unifix cubes to represent the 0.4 from John Hattie's research. And in the right hand, because we did this at the end of the school year, is the effect size from their class, so they could see it. Okay? So it is, again, data can be one of the most joyful things we do. But we have to know how to use data for joy. Because if we know how the newspapers use it for harm, thinking that they're going to motivate everybody to do better with all this bad news. They don't. Okay? So it is absolutely thrilling. The picture on the left is the picture that was taken, and then the people who do book covers turn it into a book cover. That's how that happened. So now, I want to connect. I've talked about John Hattie's skill, will, and thrill. We've talked about the will and the thrill. Skill is divided into three parts. There's surface, deep, and transfer learning. You know that. Okay? So we're going to spend a little time on that. One of the things that is distressing to me is I hear people saying that it's deep versus surface. It's not. It's surface as the foundation for deep. But the surface has to be essential and remembered. It can't be trivia or forgotten. It's surface and remembered. One of my favorite examples of that is 5th graders are told, the fire marshal is going to be here next week. She wants to know what % of the walls in this classroom are covered by paper. Your group, you kids, you calculate the percentage of the paper on this wall, the percentage of this wall covered by paper. You kids do this wall, you kids do this wall, you kids do this wall. Now, how do you do that if you don't know how to multiply, you don't know what area means, how you don't know what percentage means? No, you're lost. There's surface learning that's the foundation for that deep question. So it's not either or, it is both. And that is one of the things that John Hattie has really emphasized. So now we go back to the goalpost. Would you open that page up? What I want you to do is to draw lines across there. It's a rope. Draw lines, it's a rope. A soccer goalpost. That represents the surface learning. How do you make a rope useful? It's knots. Draw knots on it. If you really want to know an effective way to monitor the success of kids with deep learning, on my website are dichotomous rubrics. They answer yes and no questions. You can look at those at a later time. And then we go to transfer learning. Then you draw the vertical lines. That's what makes our net. When we put all three together, surface, deep, and transfer learning, we have a net. And that net is there to catch opportunities. I was in a classroom sharing with them surface, deep, and transfer learning. You know what the kids wanted to talk about? Transfer learning. That's what intrigued them the most. That what they learned in one class transferred to another classroom. But let's look at a couple examples of transfer learning. In a 1st grade, the student knew what tangrams were, knew the names of all the shapes. So, sitting there one day, dangling her legs, she realized there was a parallelogram at her elbow, and she never knew that before. So she brought it to school and she wrote, "This is a parallelogram. How did I make it? I ripped open a toilet paper roll." She transferred the learning from school to an out-of-school experience. That's transfer. But sometimes they transfer from school, from subject to subject. So here's a 5th grader. Her job was learn how to use square roots with base 10 blocks. And you estimated. You could do square root of 15, square root of 87, square root of 975, base 10 blocks, square roots. You estimate it very closely. And so she wrote a thank you note on that. And the thank you note said, I wanted to do square roots just for you, but all I had were triangle roots. She took the literature she'd learned as a young child, one of the Mercer Myers books. I wanted to just for you, but, and she took that language into her thank you note. Now, here is our net. Why do we need a net? Because the soccer balls represent opportunities, and opportunities come at us. We need to be ready. And when you've got a net that's the surface, deep, and transfer learning, then whatever opportunities come, you are ready. So, if you had a soccer ball in your hand, give it a toss, because opportunities come. You have to all be ready when opportunities come. There they go, all over the room, opportunities. Be ready for them. Get ready, they're coming at you. Okay? And that's our job, to have kids ready for the opportunities. We want to put the Jenkins curve in the history books. And now, here's the beauty of what's before you. We have the surface, deep, and transfer learning poppies, surrounded by the will and thrill lupines, supported by the water and the soil of rapport and relationships. That beauty is for all of us. We just have to destroy the Jenkins curve, replace the bad things we inherited, and that beauty is for us. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.